This time the faction focus is on the army everyone's been waiting for. Jokes aside, I can't help but look at this preview positively, because GW has actually reframed the Leagues of Votann as I've suggested. Is someone at GW watching this little channel of mine? Regardless, let's take a look. Votann's army rule is Eye of the Ancestors. Again, another unsurprising turn here. The Leagues of Votann debuted with their Judgment Token mechanic, and it feels a suitable one to serve as their army rule, though it's far more reined in. For starters, enemy units are capped at 2 Judgment Tokens instead of 3, and the ability only deals Judgment Tokens to enemy units which destroy one of your units. No longer will someone raising a flag across the map out of line of sight earn a Judgment Token, and the ability no longer doles out a single Judgment Token to an enemy unit on an objective. As for the perks themselves, GW has reined in that as well. Instead of auto-wounding on 6s and then 5s and then 4s, it now serves a +1 to hit and a +1 to wound. Under this reframing, Judgment Tokens seem to be doled out less often and provide an admittedly weaker perk, though I would argue it's a far more tasteful incarnation, one that keeps to the spirit of the Eye of the Ancestors. And every unit being able to benefit from a +1 to hit and wound against specified targets is nothing to make light of. However, Eye of the Ancestors will be further contextualized as we continue. So let's carry on. Votann's detachment rule is Ruthless Efficiency. Simply choose a single enemy unit at the start of the battle to gain 2 Judgment Tokens. If that unit is destroyed, you gain command points. A hefty amount if you manage to do it quickly by Battle Round 2, or a nominal amount if done in Battle Round 5. It's very straightforward, not very complicated at all. In that, it feels to me very dwarven. And it creates an interesting mind game. If the Votann player chooses the biggest, baddest unit of their enemies for Ruthless Efficiency, that may discourage that unit from being used as aggressively. Or what if the opponent has one forward deploying tool and the Votann player chooses that unit? Now their enemy will think twice about using that utility against them. And if they do, the Votann player will be all the more likely to gain that big command point bump in a further stifled command point environment. Moving on to unit spotlights, we get the Hearthkin Warriors. And wowee have they been rejigged. Their Void armor is now represented as Toughness 5, which is a massive tool down from not being able to reroll wounds or damage rolls and reducing incoming AP by 1. Sidebar, this is far more tasteful in my eyes. In the past, I've claimed that Votann were the army of exceptions. I mean, how excited would I be to play Salamander's Tactics, where my army ability is to reroll 1 wound roll each time I shoot or fight, against Votann, an army that just says, no you can't. My point is, this shift goes a long way towards removing that slight. And the Hearthkin Warriors have seen the same leadership drop as the Sisters of Battle, going from the Marine standard to one worse. But the biggest change of all is now Votann appears to be a ballistic skill 4 army. And the second biggest change is their Ion Blasters dropping to damage 1. These changes, I'm sure, will be undeniably shattering to some, but hear me out. As I said in my 9th edition Votann critique video, moving them to a BS4+ army further separates them from Marines, granting them a more unique identity, as they are no longer an army characterized by being tough, with superior to human skill, with better weapons than Marines. So now, Votann have their Space Dwarven superior weapons, are still a rung more hardy at Toughness 5, but aren't as skilled as the Super Soldiers and Space Elves. And Ion Blasters being brought down to damage 1 doesn't allow Votann to load up a battle line unit with weapons where each attack will level a Marine. A damage profile which seems to be reserved for heavy and special weapons in 10th edition. Before leaving weapons, I do want to highlight their missile launcher maintains its strength of 9, putting it in line with infantry-based Melta weapons, meaning it can wound Rhino-type vehicles on 4s. But the Magna Rail Rifle sports a beefy strength of 12 with good AP and high damage numbers, and Devastating Wounds create some scary potential for an infantry-based heavy weapon. But it has a natural ballistic skill of 5, with heavy if stationary or if targeting a judged target hitting on 4s. Maybe even 3s if hit modifiers stack like they used to, though of that I'm not sure. Feel free to comment if you know what's what. Ability-wise, the Hearthkin Warriors have Luck Has, Need Keeps, Toil Earns, which gives them sticky objective control. And they have a bevy of war gear abilities. Pan-Spectral Scanner gives the models in the unit Ignores Cover, which should not be taken lightly with how prevalent cover seems to be. Commsura gives you a command point on a 5+ when using a stratagem on that unit, which is like the Vox Caster ability. I'm starting to see a trend here. Metapack now gives the unit a 6-up Feel No Pain, rather than the previous ignoring the first attack's damage per turn. Seems like 9th edition's Apothecary rules are being applied more consistently in 10th. And the Wavecrest Shield maintains its 4-up invulnerable save for the unit's Thane. Moving on, we also get a Land Fortress preview, which now sports a tasteful profile similar to the Land Raider. Offensively, we can see it's been moved to the BS4 standard as well. However, like many vehicles we've seen, the heavy weapons fire at the native army ballistic skill and not one worse. Big takeaways. Beamers will no longer suffice as preferred anti-tank weapons, though it certainly has its place for anti-elite and light vehicles, keeping its potent forward damage. And the Magna Rail Rifle is the premier anti-tank ranged weapon, strength 18, AP-4, D6 plus 6 damage, with a chance for that shot to just deal D6 plus 6 mortal wounds. Tremendous. Also worthy of note is the Land Fortress's access to the Panspectral Scanner, which will ensure its AP is able to carry against targets in cover. However, the new spicy ability for the Land Fortress is Fire Support, which grants units, which disembarked from the Land Fortress, full rerolls to wound when targeting an enemy unit which the Land Fortress attacked and scored a hit against that turn. A potent force multiplier to be certain. In the weapon spotlight, Warhammer Community is using the SP Conversion Beamer to show off the Conversion Weapon ability, which if targeting a unit more than 12 inches away, a hit roll of 4+, scores a critical hit. This ability feeds into sustained hits, which grants critical hits the ability to score D3 additional hits. Firstly, it's nice to see the rules have been written in a way where they interact and don't require a giant wall of text. And secondly, the mechanics here are nicely abstracting the narrative, describing that if the beam hits, the target continues to be buffeted by the beam. And in the Stratagem Spotlight, we got Reactive Reprisal. To be perfectly honest, it's not very exciting, because it's very similar to the stratagem which was previewed yesterday for the Sisters of Battle. Only it requires the aggressor to have a judgment token, and those attacks do not need to destroy a model from the Votann unit.
Same, but different. But still same.
Well, that's it for this faction-focused preview. To be honest, I really liked it. Can you blame me? I had a critical take, and GW aligned things to that preference. And unsurprisingly, I feel Votann are more tasteful for it. I mean, dwarves aren't exactly known for their accuracy, but they're hardy, and their weapons hit with force. As for the preview itself, I'd rate it 7 out of 10. Like with the Sisters yesterday, we got a good picture into Votann's toolkit with the army and detachment rules on display, and a stratagem which plays into the army rule. But I want to hear from you, and especially the Votann player base. What do you think about what's been previewed on this faction focus?